Imagine you have lived your life with every single person you have ever met spelling your name incorrectly. For as long as you've known how to spell, you've known that something was wrong with the spelling you were told was correct and unchangeable. When you tried to correct people, they ostracized and even potentially harmed you. This part of your identity was so often mistaken for something else by every person that you know. It's difficult to conceive of this kind of world, but for the transgender community, this is their daily reality. This is a community that has long struggled for generations with being marginalized, mistreated, and ignored by the public and the law. The rate of hate violence towards transgender people is alarmingly high. However, this changed forever on October 15, 2017, when California Governor Jerry Brown signed into law the Gender Recognition Act that removed a previous requirement to undergo gender-affirming surgery to change a person's legal gender. In addition, an individual must only submit an application to the state to be able to list their gender as a third gender category labeled non-binary. California is the first state to legally observe a gender outside male or female and to do so without requiring surgery to legally identify as non-binary. Today I'm going to persuade you that this act should be adopted on the federal level in the United States. To understand the issues that affect the transgender population, it is essential to describe this group of people accurately. A large number of Americans currently do not have correct legal status of their gender represented on their identification. A study published in AMJ Public Health of February 2017, almost 1 million Americans self-identify as transgender. Being transgender refers to someone whose gender identity and presentation does not reflect the gender they were assigned at birth. Most understand this to mean women who used to be men or men who used to be women. However, many transgender individuals identify outside of the gender binary, which is the social concept that there are only two genders, male or female. Non-binary people are those whose gender identity exists outside of this idea. For the purpose of this speech, I will be referring to these people as a whole as the transgender population for ease of language. As a member of the LGBTQ community, I am close friends with many transgender individuals and who live that daily experience. In addition, I've been doing activism work for this community since I was 15 years old, both of which give me insight into the discrimination experienced by transgender people. This gender identity is widely underrepresented in mainstream society and media, given the rigidly structured gender roles that define how we interact with one another. Genders outside this binary do not exist in United States law, so a fundamental part of 1 million American identities are not accurately represented in all legal documents a transgender person signs, whether it be censuses, birth certificates, or what have you. This causes problems for transgender people on a daily basis, adding a layer of complication and potential suspicion for any action that requires the use of an ID. Transgender individuals often suffer from what's called ID anxiety, as their personhood is questioned on a regular basis by law enforcement and government officials, as a Time article published in June 2017 describes. By adopting the law that recognizes their correct gender in all states, this archaic process can be eliminated. Rather than interrogating someone over how their appearance matches a letter on their license, allowing transgender people to ID themselves as non-binary without requiring surgery allows people to represent their authentic selves safely in public life. Transgender life is already complicated enough when it lacks proper representation, but there is an added danger of hate violence that plagues these 1 million Americans. Legal recognition would not completely erase the violence against transgender people, of course, but it would be a step in the direction towards equity. Being an out transgender individual comes with many risks, as almost half of all hate crime victims are transgender women, as research from GLAAD, which is the organization that formerly stands for Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, describes. The National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs reports that transgender Americans are sometimes as likely as cisgender Americans to experience police brutality. Police violence against transgender Americans could be curbed if they're able to legally represent their real gender in public life, by removing a major source of conflict, the mismatching gender presentation and legal representation. In addition, GLAAD has noted that the rate of fatal hate crimes against transgender people has been rising since 2013, from 18 transgender people to 27 in 2016. and in these cases, the majority of the victims were transgender women of color. Legally normalizing the presence of transgender people in our society would increase their safety from potential violence. Adopting the Gender Recognition Act would help curb this violence, but not completely erase it. The second part of this act removes the requirement that an individual must alter their body to legally change their gender. As previously mentioned, gender-affirming surgery and a physician's note is required to change a legal gender, yet it only allows someone to change their gender legally within the binary. In most states, transgender only refers to people who self-identify as male or female and does not include non-binary people. This procedure is something that most transgender Americans cannot afford. A transgender person would need to undergo several procedures, which can range from mastectomies to hormone replacement and or genital reconfiguration. A 2017 CNN article reports that surgeries can cost up to $100,000 and are not covered by most insurances. The Human Rights Campaign reports that between 1996 and 2006, nearly 57% of transgender Americans faced employment discrimination. These actions can range from being denied a promotion to being harassed at work to even being fired. When surgery is required to change one's legal gender, it prevents a large percentage of the transgender population from being seen as the gender that their appearance suggests. The depth of injustice that the transgender community faces creates many boundaries for the length of their lifetimes. In conclusion, transgender lives in America have been limited and endangered for decades. Transgender people are widely unrepresented in American law despite representing over 1 million citizens, and the rate of their hate crimes against them is extremely high. Requiring surgery to change one's legal gender prevents a large portion of this population from giving accurate legal representation of their lives. This could be the generation that protects transgender lives in a way that has never been done before. The adoption of the Gender Recognition Act throughout all 50 states would not only ease the daily struggles of transgender people, but also normalize their presence in society and keep them safe from brutality.